Peter? Today, JSS Law College Autonomous Mysuru, in association with Institute of Legal and Policy Research, is organizing an international conference on revitalizing sustainable development goals for a resilient future. Cordial greetings to the dignitaries online as well as offline, and the participants and the paper presenters present here, and also those who have joined on online mode. Let us begin this occasion by invoking the blessings of the Almighty. I call upon Ms. Megha K, final year student, for the invocation song.
आदित्यः सविता सूर्यः कागः पूर्वा गभस्तिमान् सुवर्णसदृशो भानुः स्वर्णरेखादिवाकरः नमः पूर्वाय गिरये पश्चिमाध्याये नमः ज्योतिर्गणानां पतये दिनाधिपतये नमः जयाय जयभद्राय हर्यश्वाय नमो नमः नमो नमः सहस्रांशो आदित्याय नमो नमः आदित्याय नमो नमः आदित्याय नमो नमः.
Thank you, Megha. That was a soulful rendition. Now, I respectfully invite Dr. N. Vanishri, Principal, for the welcome speech.
A very pleasant morning for this international conference on revitalizing sustainable development goals for the resilient future. And I deem it a great honor to do the welcome speech. Firstly, I would like to welcome and introduce Dr. George Alfred James, who is with us on this occasion. He has received his PhD in History and Philosophy of Religion from the Columbia University in the year 1983. He served on the faculty of the University of North Texas until his retirement and appointment as Professor Emeritus in 2020. From 2017 until his retirement, he was Bhagwan Adhinath Professor of Jain and India Studies. In addition to his work on the life and activism of Sundarlal Bahuguna, whom we have all heard of, a great environmentalist, titled Ecology is Permanent Economy. Now, it's got translated in Hindi in the year 2022, Kannada also the same year. He is the author of Interpreting Religion, a study of phenomenological approaches to religion, and editor of the volume of essays entitled Ethical Perspectives on Environmental Issues in India. For the past 30 years, he has been researching and publishing in the areas of comparative environmental philosophy and environmental movements in India. Please settle down quickly. His research is published in such journals as Zygon, International Philosophical Quarterly, and World Reviews. He has also contributed to the Encyclopedia of Religion, the Encyclopedia of Religion and Nature, and the Encyclopedia of Environmental Ethics and Philosophy. Now, he was with us in the year 2022, on a similar occasion where we had an expo on law of environment, and especially with the pollution-related aspects. He was there with us the whole day, going around and being with the students from morning till evening. And he's again back to JSS Law College to be with us and to enhance our knowledge and share his expertise with us. Sir, a very warm welcome to you. And on my personal behalf and on behalf of the college, a very warm welcome to the heritage city of Mysuru and JSS Law College, sir. Nextly, I have another legal luminary who is none other than Dr. Sairam Bhatt. From the National Law School of India University. He is the professor of law and co-director, Center for Environmental Law, Education, Research and Advocacy, CERA. He's with us, he's joined with us online in spite of his busy schedule. His academic programs, I'm following his instructions as in his request. So I'll not make it too long. I'll just give you all a brief introduction of Dr. Sairam Bhatt and move forward. So we have his achievements are he has been the coordinator of various courses, environmental law, contract 2, law on transparency and good governance, environmental law and policy, environmental litigation and practice, contract 1, and the other subjects. His education qualifications are very proud alumnus of JSS Law College in the year 1997. He has done his master's program from the University of Mysore and PhD in the year 2006 from the University of Mysuru. And some of his credentials are, he's been the editor of Kari Law Journal in 2005 and 6. He's co-authored Environmental Law, Handbook for the Law Practitioners in the year 2002. He's been an editor of law relating to business contracts in India, the Sage India publications in the year 2009. He's authored Natural Resources Conservation Law, again from the Sage India publishers, 2010. Authored Right to Information, Eastern Book from the Eastern Book House publishers, Guwahati, 2012. His research and other activities, he's received the Young India Environmental Law Fellowship in the year 2003. He's been an adjunct faculty of Golden Gate University, San Francisco. He's also been a recipient of the Fulbright Fellowship in the year 2010. He's a visiting researcher at the Georgetown University Law Center. And of course, Linnaeus Palme Academic Exchange Fellow at the Royal Institute of Technology, Stockholm, Sweden. This was in the year 2013, and many more to his credits. And he's been there throughout, guiding us as an alumnus and as a mentor to our college, and always ready to be with us on any occasion despite his busy schedule. A very warm welcome to you. I know I have exceeded the time in introducing you, but then I wanted Dr. George to know more about you, and a very warm welcome and thank you for your time. Nextly, we have Sri Venugopal Padavu. He's the guest of honor on this occasion for the inaugural session of the conference. He's an associate director, international affairs for, I think, more than 25 years now, and part of the St. Joseph's University, Bengaluru, India. He's been the former esteemed senior director, Indian Council for Cultural Relations, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. And Mr. Venugopal, sir, has always been with us in most of the activities pertaining to international MUN that we have conducted in our college. And we are eagerly waiting to receive him in the further events. But today again, due to his busy schedule, he's joined us, or he's going to join us, or yeah, sir has already joined us. Yes, sir, just right time. And welcome to you, sir. And he's with us here online, and he's going to travel immediately after this session. And he was very kind enough to join us for the inaugural session and wish us for the success of this conference. And of course, our own, we have Mr. Syed Qudrat Hashimi. He's a student of ours, our college and mine, from Afghanistan. And he's from the rich cultural tapestry of Afghanistan, like I just told you all. Mr. Syed Qudrat stands as a distinguished figure in the realm of the legal scholarship. His unwavering commitment towards academic excellence is evidenced in an impressive trajectory that began in the University of Mysore in the international law with a distinction. And his exceptional performances are the gold medals and the cash prizes that he's won in the annual convocation held by the University of Mysore, showing his commitment and intellect towards his pursuance of his master degree, and he is currently pursuing his PhD, and he has got another LLM from the Nalsar from Hyderabad, and which shows that he has got the he has got the quest for learning more and more and the hunger to do more and more, and he is with us. And I want to also make a mention that he is the coordinator and founder of the Institute of Legal and Policy Research, wherein he helps the girls from the Afghanistan and the others, just not from Afghanistan, he's mentoring them, in fact, through online. Now, how can a PhD research scholar do so many things together? Shows his time given his commitment and time given to do all these, and also his service oriented nature, which has made him a great personality. And on behalf of the college and myself, I extend to you a very warm welcome, Syed. And Professor K. Suresh, the chief executive of this program, he was to be here. Due to unavoidable circumstances, he is not here with us today. And a very warm welcome to Sir, who's been guiding us and taking us throughout all the activities of the college. In his absentia, I extend to him a warm welcome. All my dear colleagues, of course, my beloved students who are sitting right in front of me, who are here, stepping out of this college next year to start their profession, their respective professions. And of course, I would fail on my duty if I don't welcome the coordinator of this program, organizing secretary, Ms. Sheila Ganesh, and our systems manager, Mr. Madhu Kumar, who's been with us throughout, and the student member coordinators who are from the junior classes, who are with us here today to culminate this program and to take forward this program the whole of the day. Thank you very much, and I welcome one and all of you all to this international conference once again. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the warm welcome. Now, on behalf of everyone present here, I warmly welcome you too. Now I request Mr. Syed Kudrat Hashmi, founder Institute of Legal and Policy Research, to give a brief insight about the conference.
Good morning. Of course, it would be very difficult for me today to stand before a prolific writer, Professor Sairamba, and Professor George, and Dr. N. Wanishri. Of course, the supporter of my education, ICCR Director, Shri Venugopal sir. So, the participants, I would like to welcome you to this international conference on revitalizing sustainable development goal for resilient futures. It is great honor for me being an Afghan national and alumni of JSS Law College, where my studies began in this heritage city, to highlight about today's program. Of course, sustainable development was adopted in 2015 by the United Nations. It is today is a comprehensive blueprint for us to discuss on some issues. And in JSS Law College, we have tried to discuss on some issues such as climate change, environmental degradation. However, there are significant work has been done by the United Nations and some universities like such as ANLU Bangalore and so on. But there are some works remain to be addressed, and climate change, environmental degradation has been impacted during the COVID-19. We were not so successful to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal. Then it is impacted by the natural disasters, and now it is fueled by the ongoing armed conflict, violence, war, and militarization. I come from a country such as Afghanistan, which we can see that how the war impact in the environment. Now, the same thing we experience in the Middle East and Gulf. So we are in the critical juncture to define the 21st century, how we mitigate what this sustainable development goals. And this conference is not just about today we are identifying the challenges, what I have named, but today we are finding through our deliberation and dialogue to find the solution. So over the next hours, we will talk on affordable energy, which is the Sustainable Development Goal 7. Then we talk about sustainable cities and communities, that is Goal 11. And we will talk on the climate action, which is very important for the law students to discuss upon. There's no doubt the environment provides for us renewable energy, non-renewable energy fuels, such as solar, wind, hydropower, geothermal, and biofuels. Using this without taking actions to mitigate climate change, definitely it has an impact on our life, on our health, on our cities. So today you see the population is increasing, and to accommodate everyone to survive in sustainable cities, we need a smart city planning, and we need laws to regulate that, and we need technologies to regulate in the way that everyone is got accommodated. Of course, we will stand on the principle of sustainable development goal that everyone should utilize it. No one should remain behind. But we have been impacted by various causes. So today we, particularly in GSS Law College, we are in the threshold of the new era where we discuss on many issues such as energy, landscapes, which is now is a transformation for us. And we need to discuss on technological advancement and the connection between law and the technology. However, there is a global shift towards the clean energy, whereas 800 million people around the globe remain without energy, and 2.6 million people remain without proper cooking fuels. So this is not just a statistical data which I highlighted, but this is a challenge and barrier we need to discuss upon, and we need to talk about affordable energy. So I don't want to take much time because we have Dr. George sir to address us and Professor Sairam, but I would like to hear from them. Thank you, and I'm very happy to be part of this program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I request our chief guest and the dignitaries on the dais to join to inaugurate the international conference with a kind gesture of nourishing the sapling. I request the dignitaries who are present online to join us and to inaugurate it virtually too. Thank you, respected dignitaries. I respectfully invite Dr. Sairam Bhatt, Professor of Law, NLSIU Bangalore, and Coordinator Sarah to deliver the keynote address.
Very good morning to everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm joining online, so I know the constraints for an online, talk like this. But thank you to my own institution for giving an opportunity to speak on sustainability and development. And this being an international conference, I would lay down a few ideas of mine on what I would say the role of lawyers in SDG. Do lawyers have a role in promoting, achieving sustainable development goals? Sustainable development goals have been there for many years now. It's going to be a decade from when these were set to be achieved by nations. And very often than not, we lawyers tend to forget whether we have a role in it or not. Yeah, of course, environmental lawyers do have a role in some sense, but do other lawyers have a role? So, addressing the audience of law students, let's look at yesterday's judgment, a very interesting judgment that was given by a constitutional bench in a case called Property Owners Association was the state of Maharashtra. Did some of our students have an opportunity to read this 9-judge constitutional bench judgment yesterday? Were we able to read this? Anyone who has been following the news? Okay. Friends, let me just talk to you about this case because this case is a very important one on Article 39B of the Constitution of India. It's a constitutional bench judgment. Okay. Now, what does this do is that it was an 8:1 verdict. There was one judge who gave a dissenting opinion. But I think the majority opinion on Article 39B said that all private property cannot be used for community resources. Now, why this judgment is important? It is important because we are talking about sustainable development goals today. And if you talk about sustainable goals today, friends, in India, we may have achieved many of these goals, but we may have to reiterate that there are certain basic goals like SDG 1, which says no poverty, SDG 2, which says zero hunger, SDG 10, which talks about reduce inequality, and SDG 12, which talks about responsible consumption. Now, when you reflect on this constitutional judgment that was delivered yesterday, you will notice that the directive principles of state policy, they give the states the mandate to actually distribute material resources for the common good. Okay. So we don't want concentration of wealth in the hands of few. That is what the article in the Constitution says. So private property or private material resources, can this be used by the state to redistribute income and wealth? This was a very important question that was addressed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has given its judgment yesterday, which means, friends, if you go by the constitutional principle that if we have to take out poverty, if you have to address hunger, if you have to address inequality of income and wealth, then this judgment is a very critical contribution as we see. Friends, developmental goals that we have in this country make a very important distinction between the haves and the have-nots. Those who have are increasing their wealth and income. The have-nots or the gap between the haves and the have-nots in India is probably a cause of concern. And I think policymakers and lawyers have a role to actually bridge this gap between the haves and the have-nots. Can lawyers play a role And I think this judgment of yesterday is a very important reflection because it talks about how can the state redistribute income and wealth and thereby, bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots. Now, interestingly, friends, this judgment criticized the Krishna Iyer doctrine. I don't know if many of our students who studied constitutional law have heard about something called the Justice Krishna Iyer's doctrine. Justice Krishna Iyer's doctrine has been criticized in this judgment, saying that it was pre-liberalization era doctrine because it followed a socialistic pattern of governance. And in socialism, friends, private property could be taken over by the state. Private resources could be taken over by the state, and then it can be redistributed. That is what the communist socialistic idea was. But today, post 1991, I think the Supreme Court has changed its perspective and it has said that all private property and resources cannot be redistributed and it cannot be part of Article 39B. Now, here, friends, I should concentrate on resources, material resources. Please highlight and read this judgment. It's a very interesting one because material resources in environment are very critical to this conference. Like, for example, water. Now, friends, please note, is there poverty of water in India? See, poverty is one interesting definition. Poverty in what kind? Of course, we say poverty is measured by income. But let me tell you, friends, in India, poverty of resources is a huge challenge. For example, there are a lot of places in India where probably people do not have water, which is one, portable, drinkable, and adequate enough for their living standards. So there is water scarcity as a material resource or a natural resource in this country. How do I manage water equity? Because sustainable development goals means, friends, please note, if you ask me, managing the resources in such a manner that it meets the needs of the current generation without compromising the needs of the future generation. And water is a very critical element. Ladies and gentlemen, hear me out. We in India, and as Mysoreans, I'm sure many of you understand how we are looking at water from an interstate perspective. Kaveri water from Karnataka to Tamil Nadu. So the critical component is how do I look at sustainable water use? Right? It is a material resource. Please note it down. It is something that the states have to manage. So there are a lot of companies that can sink borewells and extract water, right? And they make water a private property. And when they make such a commodity or such a resource as a private property, they tend to exploit it. But ladies and gentlemen, if you go by sustainable development goals, we do not want water to be private property. We want water to be a community resource. And that's why the courts apply the public trust doctrine in the management of resources such as water. And hence, coming back to the real question about whether lawyers have a role to play. Now think of water and think of what lawyers can do. Friends, I believe the most important role that lawyers have in SDG is to look at what I call as rule of law. A jurist by name A.V. Dicey laid down the component of what I call as rule of law. Friends, if SDGs have to be a reality, I think all lawyers must now develop the concept of what we call as the environmental rule of law. Because resources have to be managed in a transparent, accountable manner so that inequity of the use of the resources is reduced to the maximum extent. And hence, I think lawyers play a very critical role in laying down the policy of resource utilization and resource distribution. One other aspect that I would want to add here before I close this short interaction with you. Said talked about energy. Friends, it is very important and critical to understand that poverty of energy, as I call poverty, in what sense? Income poverty, or is it poverty of resources? Energy is also a critical component to look at sustainable development. Because today you're talking of energy that is renewable and probably those that do not contribute to adverse impact that is faced due to climate action. And hence, friends, in India, while we are talking of energy, we are talking of energy security. But at the same time, there are 3 A's in energy that are relevant and important. First, availability of energy. There are so many places critical in India where still energy is not available to the extent that is required to have a sustainable living standards. 2, we are talking of affordability, the 3 A's that I would want to call it: availability, affordability, and most importantly, accessibility. So when you talk of energy and SDGs, the 3 A's are also an element of how lawyers can actually play an important role. For example, friends, most of us consume electricity. Remember, electricity and energy are not necessarily one and the same, but of course, electricity is one subset of energy. Today, everyone is concerned about our electricity bill. Are we all, as Indians, looking at energy that is affordable? Of course, it is available right now in some places in urban areas. You can access it as well because that is what is a fundamental right. And the Supreme Court has also said it. Access to energy is a fundamental. They did not say energy is a fundamental right. So there is a difference. As students of law, you must know this distinction. Right to energy is not a fundamental right, but right to access energy is. So that's a very interesting, distinction that has been brought by the court. But are you looking at energy that is affordable? Just nod your head, yes or no. Let me just at least see whether the audience is, hearing to this lecture or not. We are all very price sensitive, and we want energy that is affordable. It is not inflationary tariff on electricity and energy that you are looking at. If the prices of crude oil or petrol passes 100 rupees, we are all very concerned about. So affordability is also an important component in a country like India that is so-called developing and going and reaching to developed status as a mission and a goal in 2047, what is known as the Viksit Bharat mission. So I believe, friends, our process of sustainable life, or what the Prime Minister calls as mission life, right? Every walk of life, every sector has to turn sustainable. Be it educational sector, be it the industrial sector, be it the court system. Unless we all turn to sustainability of life, we will not be able to achieve the sustainable goals as we expect it to be. So I believe that lawyers do have a role to play, and laying down the rule of law, which includes transparency, accountability, rule by law and not rule by men, looking at affordability, looking at human rights, especially in SDGs. I think legal institutions can make a huge contribution in assisting the country in achieving the sustainable development goals. So with this, let me hand it over to the organizers, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for your very informative ideas how to bring sustainable development into practice by referring to various principles that we have already adopted in the environmental law, as well as the role of government in shouldering the public trust responsibilities. Thank you very much, sir. May I request our guest of honor, Sri Venugopal Padavu, Associate Director, International Affairs, St. Joseph University, Bengaluru, to give his insights about this international conference.
Distinguished chief guests, both online and offline, the principal of JSS Law College, my friend and scholar, Mr. Syed Kudrat Asimi, and my dear students. It is an honor and privilege for me to be here today at the International Conference on Revitalizing Sustainable Development Goals for a Resilient Future. This gathering of brilliant minds from across the globe reflects the collective resolve of humanity to confront the challenges we all face and to embrace opportunities that will lead to a brighter, more equitable, and sustainable future. When the United Nations adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in 2015, it marked a momentous step forward in our shared responsibility to protect the planet and poverty and ensure that no one is left behind. The Sustainable Development Goals were set as a blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. Today, as we stand at the crossroads of unprecedented global challenges, climate change, inequality, conflict, and economic instability, it is more urgent than ever to not only commit to these goals, but to re-energize our efforts to achieve them. The world has changed rapidly since the adoption of its Sustainable Development Goals, and the crisis we now face, whether health, climate, or geopolitical, requires us to be even more innovative, adaptive, and resilient in our approach to sustainable development. The conference, Revitalizing Sustainable Development Goals for a Resilient Future, is a testament to the fact that solutions do not exist in isolation. They are found at the intersection of cooperation, innovation, policy, and local action. It is here, in the space of collaboration, that we can chart the course for a resilient future. Resilience, in its essence, is the ability to adapt, recover, and thrive in the face of adversity. But resilience is not just about bouncing back, it is about bouncing forward in a way that leads to more just, inclusive, and sustainable world. In this context, revitalizing the Sustainable Development Goals is not merely an exercise in policymaking. It is about rethinking how we approach sustainable development, ensuring that our strategies are flexible, transformative, and inclusive of all the voices, particularly the most marginalized. The need for global solidarity has never been clear. From tackling climate change through the Paris Agreement to ensuring access to quality education and healthcare for all, the Sustainable Development Goals provide a framework that encourages countries to work together to lift up all people, regardless of where they live or their socio-economic status. But it is also clear that national governments alone cannot achieve these ambitious goals. The private sector, civil society, academia, and individuals each have a critical role to play. The digital revolution, green technologies, social entrepreneurship, and community-led innovation all provide powerful tools for advancing sustainable development. The Sustainable Development Goals are not a blueprint for what governments should do, but for what all of us must do together. As we gather here, the urgent need for climate action stands at the forefront of our global agenda. The impacts of climate change are already being felt by vulnerable communities around the world, from the devastating floods in Libya to the wildfires in California, from the droughts in the Horn of Africa to the rising sea levels threatening low-lying islands. Climate change is not a distant threat, it is a present reality. In this context, we must not only intensify efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also build the resilience of communities to the impacts of climate change. We must ensure that sustainable development is not a luxury for the privileged few, but a fundamental right for all people, particularly those who are most at risk. As we discuss revitalizing the Sustainable Development Goals, we must place climate action at the center of our efforts, integrating it across all goals and all sectors. Innovation is the key to unlocking new solutions to old problems. From renewable energy technologies to breakthroughs in sustainable agriculture, from digital education platforms to health innovations, technology holds the promise of transformative the way we approach development. But innovation must go hand in hand with education. It is through education that we equip future generations to solve the challenges we face, to think critically, to innovate responsibly, and to lead with empathy and vision. Our ability to harness the potential of technology and innovation is directly tied to the creation of an inclusive and equitable society. We must ensure that the benefits of progress are shared broadly and do not leave anyone behind. Access to digital technologies, sustainable infrastructure, and quality education are crucial to this vision. Achieving the sustainable development goals requires an unwavering commitment to partnership. No nation, no organization, no individual can achieve these goals alone. Only through collective action across sectors, borders, and communities can we create the conditions for a resilient and sustainable future. This is why international conferences like this one are so important. They bring together diverse voices and expertise, foster collaboration, and provide a platform for sharing ideas, knowledge, and solutions. Here we have the opportunity to learn from one another, to challenge each other, and to co create the pathways that will lead us towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 and beyond. I would like to remind all of us that the SDGs are not an end in themselves, but a means to an end, a world where people live in harmony with the planet, where economic development is inclusive and equitable, and where resilience is built into the fabric of our societies. As we embark on the discussions and deliberations during this conference, I request each one of you to think beyond the challenges we face and to focus on the solutions we can create together. Let us be bold, let us be visionary, and let us be united in our pursuit of a sustainable and resilient future for all. I wish you all a successful and fruitful conference. I thank the management and the principal of Jesus Law College and also the coordinator and founder, Institute of Legal and Policy Research, for having invited me to be a part of these deliberations. Once again, thank you, and I wish the conference all success. Thank you.
Sustainable development is not a luxury, but a responsibility on all the stakeholders. It is an unwavering commitment shouldered on all of us. Thank you, sir, for your valuable insights and your motivational speech. Now, I request Sri Pranav Kumar Nair to render the vote of thanks.
A very good morning to all of you. It is indeed my privilege to propose the formal vote of thanks. At the outset, I wholeheartedly thank our chief guest of this conference, Professor Dr. George Alfred James, Professor Emeritus, Kansas State University, Texas, for inaugurating this event. Thank you, Professor. I thank Professor Dr. Sairam Bhatt, Professor of Law at NLSIU Bengaluru, for his valuable presence virtually and for delivering the keynote address. Thank you, Professor. I thank our guest of honor, Sri Venugopal Padavu, Associate Director, International Affairs at St. Joseph's University, Bengaluru, for his esteemed presence and valuable inputs. Thank you, sir. I thank Professor K. Suresh, the Chief Executive of JSS Law College Autonomous, in absentia, for providing all the support and encouragement in organizing this conference. I further thank our beloved Principal, Dr. Vanishri, for taking the lead and participating in this conference. Thank you, ma'am. Most importantly, I thank the conference coordinator, Mr. Syed Kudrat Hashimi, research scholar from University of Mysore, for organizing this event. Thank you, sir. A special thanks to Madam Sheila Ganesh, Assistant Professor and Organizing Secretary, for her wonderful teamwork in bringing this inaugural session a grand success. Thank you, ma'am. I also thank the student coordinators who have worked tirelessly for this conference. Thank you. Finally, I thank the teaching and non-teaching staff and our beloved students and participants for their valuable presence and participation. Thank you all.
Now we'll be moving to the technical session. The topic for the technical session is Global Climate Change and the Indian Environment. The session shall be handled by Dr. George Alfred James, Emeritus Bhagwan Adinath, Professor of Jain and India Studies, University of North Texas, Denton, Texas, USA. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation to talk with you, visit with you today. I will begin with a confession, and that is that I'm not a specialist in global climate change. So the comments I will make are comments that you would be able to find in the UN website on climate change. But they are nevertheless profound, and they are nevertheless very important. And the title that I gave, Global Climate Change and the Indian Environment, is intended in two ways. Both, I'm speaking of the Indian environment in the sense of the world in which we live, but also the intellectual climate, the intellectual environment in which these issues are being addressed. I'm going to show that film, that clip called Don't Shoot Extinction. Ready? I would like to begin with something that might be a little bit entertaining. It's a clip of only 2 minutes long that was produced by the UNEP, that is the United Nations Environmental Program, trying to raise consciousness about the gravity of the issue of global climate change and the effects of global climate change and what we are doing that is exacerbating the problem. So if we can see that film now, that will be appropriate. I can proceed without it if you don't know. It's almost ready, they're telling me.
Can we do it later?
Yeah, we can do that. Okay. I will suggest that when you get home and when you have access to your own computer, you go to a website called don'tchooseextinction.com. It will take you to this 2-minute clip, which is really quite entertaining. And what it is a dinosaur who appears at the UN General Assembly and mounts to the dais and announces to the people that he knows a little bit about extinction, because as we know, dinosaurs were extinct, and their extinction was brought about by, we presume, an asteroid. And then he raises the question, what's your excuse? And he proceeds to say that you, as the human race, are in fact heading towards extinction because of the proliferation of the greenhouse gases that are continually endangering the environment. And the nations of the world are contributing a large part of their taxpayer dollar to supplement and support the industries that are producing greenhouse gases. So it's something to think about, and I think you could be very much entertained by it. I'd first like to talk about some of the effects of greenhouse gases and recognize that, as the point is made in that film, that climate change is now the greatest single threat to human life and the life of other animals on the planet. The effect of global climate change are various. One is that as greenhouse gases concentrate and as they blanket the earth, the sun's rays are sort of trapped, and the result is global warming that has an enormous impact on life on the planet. The fact of the matter is the last decade has been the warmest on record. And since 1980s, each decade has been warmer than the previous one. Nearly all land areas are seeing more and more hot days and hot waves that cause great distress and loss of productivity and disease and other conditions. Okay, the film is ready, so we'll look at it now.
You okay? You need a minute? Cool. Okay. Listen up, people. I know a thing or two about extinction. And let me tell you, and you'd kind of think this would be obvious, going extinct is a bad thing. And driving yourselves extinct? In 70 million years, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. At least we had an asteroid. What's your excuse? You're headed for a climate disaster, and yet every year governments spend hundreds of billions of public funds on fossil fuel subsidies. Imagine if we had spent hundreds of billions per year subsidizing giant meteors. That's what you're doing right now. Think of all the other things you could do with that money. Around the world, people are living in poverty. Don't you think helping them would make more sense than, I don't know, paying for the demise of your entire species? Let me be real for a second. You've got a huge opportunity right now. As you rebuild your economies and bounce back from this pandemic, this is humanity's big chance. So here's my wild idea. Don't choose extinction. Save your species before it's too late. It's time for you humans to stop making excuses and start making changes. Thank you.
To work at all, wildfires more easily spread and cause enormous damage. In my own native place, British Columbia, there was one small town that was absolutely burned to the ground 2 years ago because of a wildfire that was unable to be controlled. So it is a major hazard to population areas. And it's also interesting that temperatures in the Arctic have been warming at twice the rate of the other parts of the globe. Another effect of global climate change is more severe storms. Destructive storms have become more intense and more frequent in many regions. As global temperatures rise, moisture evaporates and exacerbates destructive storms with extreme rainfall and flooding. The frequency and extent of tropical storms is affected by the warming ocean. Cyclones, hurricanes, typhoons feed on warm waters on the ocean surface. Storms often destroy homes and communities, causing death and major economic losses. Global climate change brings about increased drought. Climate change is changing water availability, making it scarcer in more regions. Global warming exacerbates water shortages in already water-stressed regions and is leading to increased risk of agricultural droughts affecting crops and ecological droughts increasing the vulnerability of local ecosystems. Droughts can also stir destructive sandstorms and dust storms that move millions of tons of sand across continents. Deserts are expanding, reducing land for growing crops, and many people now face the threat of the threat of lack of water for irrigation and for drinking. Warming of oceans is another significant problem. The ocean soaks up most of the heat generated by global warming, but the oceans themselves are warming. And the rate at which the oceans are warming has strongly increased over the last 2 decades. It seems that in terms of global climate change, we are at a tipping point. What was very, very gradual in the past has become much more frequent in the present. As oceans warm, its volume increases, its water expands, as it gets warmer, and the melting ice sheets of the Arctic and Antarctic are causing rise in levels of water so that it is threatening coastal areas and island communities. The oceans absorb carbon dioxide, but keeping it from the atmosphere, but more carbon dioxide makes the ocean more acidic, and that endangers marine life, and particularly coral reefs. This leads to extinction of species. It is interesting that the world is losing species now at a rate of 1,000 times greater than at any other time in recorded history. 1 million species are now at risk of becoming extinct within the next few decades. Forest fires, extreme weather, and invasive pests and diseases are among the many threats related to climate change. Some species will be able to relocate and survive, but others will not and will perish. This leads also to scarcity of food and obviously to health risks of various kinds, poverty, and displacement. Water scarcity, of course, also impacts crops. Over the past decade, weather-related events displaced an estimated 23.1 million people on average each year, leaving many more vulnerable to poverty. Most refugees come from countries that are most vulnerable and least ready to adapt to the impacts of climate change. Now, let's look at some of the causes of climate change. The first thing I would say is that fossil fuels, that is coal, oil, and gas, are the largest contributors to global climate change. They account for 75% of global greenhouse gas emissions and nearly 90% of all carbon dioxide emissions. The principal greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide, but there are others as well that are also important. Greenhouse gases emissions blanket the earth. They trap the sun's heat, and this leads to global warming and climate change. The world is now warming faster than at any point in recorded history. Warmer temperatures over time are changing weather patterns. Some of them you may have observed here, even in your state. They're changing weather patterns and disrupting the usual balance of nature. This poses risk to human beings and other forms of life on the earth. So what are the causes? The first cause is power generation. I'll just mention 6. Power generation, generating electricity by heat. Generating electricity and heat by burning fossil fuels causes a large part of global greenhouse emissions. Much of our electricity, 75% of our electricity, is generated by burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas. This produces carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide. Globally, just over 1/4 of our electricity comes from wind, solar, and other renewable sources. Fortunately, those industries are growing, and it can be a great help to us as we contemplate the future. But as opposed to fossil fuels, they emit very little greenhouse gases or pollutants into the atmosphere. Second thing is manufacturing. Manufacturing industries are one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions worldwide. Manufacturing industries produce iron, steel, electrical appliances, plastics, textiles, and other goods. But what do they run on? They run on mostly coal, oil, and gas, and they produce emissions. Moreover, some products like plastics, polyester, and so on are made from chemicals that are sourced in fossil fuels. Third, one that is particularly close to my area of expertise is deforestation. Each year, approximately 12 million hectares of forests are destroyed. Why is that important? It's important because forests absorb carbon dioxide. And the result is destroying a forest limits nature's ability to keep emissions out of the atmosphere. Therefore, the elimination of forests leads to increased emissions. So in effect, deforestation is responsible for roughly 1/4 of the global greenhouse gas emissions. Greenhouse gas emissions that could have been absorbed by the forest if the forests were left standing. It's interesting to me that in the district of Uttar Kannada in your state of Karnataka, in the year 1950, the forest cover was 80% of that district. It is now less than 25% of that district. Fourth is transportation. Transportation accounts for nearly 1/4 of the global energy-related carbon dioxide emissions. Today, most cars, buses, trains, trucks, ships, and planes all run on fossil fuels, a major contributor to greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide. Due to the combustion of petrol-based products, petrol, gasoline, diesel. Road vehicles account for the largest part of that group of emissions. But in more than that, ships, which of course an enormous amount of our goods come to us by means of shipping. And there are now huge container ships, and I live in a port city, so I can observe the effects of them because they are required by law to use high efficient fuels when they are near ports. But when they are on the ocean, 10 miles away from ports, they are permitted to use the most highly polluting sources of fuel for those ships. And from my own perspective, I can see black smoke rising from those ships as they are departing from the harbors that I have lived in. This trends the trends are pointing to a significant increase in coming years in energy used for transport. So planes also emit an enormous amount of pollutants, and that is a subject of great concern. Fifth is powering buildings. Globally, residential and commercial buildings consume over half of all electricity produced. They, of course, use mostly coal, oil, natural gas for heating and cooling, and they emit significant quantities of greenhouse gases. So there's a growing demand for heating and cooling, and with increased consumption of electricity for lighting, advertising, appliances, and so on, it has contributed to a rise in energy-related carbon dioxide emissions from buildings in recent years. And the final one is overconsumption. It is interesting that the richest 1% of the global population accounts for more greenhouse gas emissions than the poorest 50%. Now, to those statistics and those observations, I will just add some of my own experience. Recently, I was in Dehradun with a couple of close friends. One, the founder of the Apiko Chalawali. His name is Pandarong Higiri. And when he visits a new area that he hasn't been involved in, he likes to visit a village in that area just to see what life is like in that village and what the problems of village people are in those regions. So I had the opportunity to visit one farmer in a remote village near Dehradun. And I asked him the question, what is the greatest challenge for you in making a living as a farmer? And I expect him to talk about the cost of fuel, the problems of labor, or other issues. But his answer was, it's the rain. The rain used to come in a regular pattern so that we could plant the paddy crops during the rainy season and harvest the paddy crops during the dry season. That has changed. And even it's been observed, even over the past 5 years, he's observed enormous changes in this, so that the rains come in torrents and wash away the seed that has been planted. And then it is followed by periods of drought and very hot sun that prevents the crops that are still in the ground from maturing and working and being able to be harvested. Your principal, when she invited me to give this talk, sent me a video clip that I found very interesting. It was about the situation in Ladakh, where people of Ladakh who are living at a very high altitude, about 15,000 feet, that's, I forgot how many meters that is, 15,000, that would be 5,000 meters. They're basically, their agriculture depends on water that comes from melting glaciers. Those glaciers are melting at a increasingly high rate. And the result is that within the next 5 years, they will be gone. And the population of Ladakh is going to be severely affected by that change. It is interesting to me that there is a website called 350.org, that I would recommend everybody take a look at. In fact, what I suggest is that you don't look at the 350.org, but look at Wikipedia and its article on 350.org, because what the 350.org doesn't do is give you really an introduction to what it's doing and what the 350 means. But the Wikipedia article will explain that. And what it says is that 350 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere is the upper region of survival. That's the highest level that we can expect of CO2 concentration in the atmosphere for life to go on and prosper. When 350.org was founded in 2007, the number of parts per million was already 383. It was measured again in July of 2022, and at that point it was 221 parts per million. And so this tells us that the increase in the CO2 levels of the atmosphere is continually going up, and there doesn't seem to be anything to stop it unless, as the dinosaur tells us, we take action immediately. And as the activists in Ladakh have said, unless action is taken, not within 20 years, but within the next 5 years, for them to survive. So it's an extremely interesting issue, and it's something that is really important. While I was in Dehradun, I had the privilege of visiting the Indian Institute of Soil and Water Management. And that institute has been keeping track of soil and the erosion of soil, water availability, temperatures, humidity, and all kinds of statistics that have to do with the capability of agriculture. And we were shown instruments that are being used to measure the soil temperature, the humidity of the air, obviously temperatures, and how these things are recorded. They even showed us a mechanism that is used to determine how much soil loss is the result of water runoff, particularly after torrential rains. It was very interesting to observe the strategies that were used to determine these statistics. After our tour was finished, I asked the person who gave us the tour, since this institute has been keeping records for the last 100 years, do you, in that record of changes, perceive any evidence, convincing evidence that global climate change is a reality? And he said, yes, there is no question about it. We can observe what it was like 100 years ago, 50 years ago. But in the last 20 years, and this is what made him think that we are at a tipping point, these changes are much more severe. And he said that the principal expression of that is the fact that rain does not come in a regular pattern as it has in the past. It comes in great amounts in torrential rains that, as I say, wash away the soil, wash away the crops, and then followed by periods of great drought that have a damaging effect on potential crops. So these are not things that are outside of our sphere of interest. They are things that are happening around us and happening today. And as you heard, the legal profession has a role to play in these situations. And I think that as lawyers moving into your professional life, you will take it seriously. Thank you very much for your attention.
That was a very insightful and informative session, sir. You took us around the life in which we are making use of and generating greenhouse gases and emissions, manufacturing level, as well as automobile, on the sea, on the road, air route, etc. And with this, I request the students, if they have any questions with this resource person, you can get the more information and clear your doubts. The session is open for any questions, interaction. Without further delay, now we'll be closing this session, technical session. Thank you very much, sir, for your insightful and thought-provoking information. And we'll be resuming back by 12 o'clock for the exhibition expo that we have arranged. So get ready with that, and it's a break for us, and we'll be coming back and resuming by 12 o'clock. Be sharp, available, and that expo, and followed by paper presentation sessions. Don't delay.